Hi, everyone. This is Charna with the LaidOPEN Podcast. And my conversation today is with a really interesting woman that I met at an event at the portal in Marin that was focused around the telepathy tapes. And we struck up a conversation. Elizabeth Rea is an evidentiary clairvoyant psychic medium who functions as a psychic detective for established founders and investors. So our conversation, it got into near-death experiences, different forms of psychic ability, intuition, working with the FBI and the CIA. More and more, there's acknowledgement of the value of psi ability or paranormal ability or ability to see and understand things in non-conventional, non-dominant ways of knowing. And so my guest today is skilled in that. And what she demonstrates, which I think is really important, is that many of us may have different abilities that we judge and we're reluctant to share or be out about. And one of the things that I've repeatedly seen is how trauma can be a doorway to spiritual awakening. And so that is also an important part of my conversation with Elizabeth. I really hope you enjoy this episode and please share it with your friends if you find benefit in it. Welcome, Elizabeth. Learn how to live embodied. Your life is about to unwind. Uncover new tools and start healing. Leave trauma and tension behind. Isn't it great, laid open? Let all your desires come true. How can you live laid open? Imagine yourself brand new. Imagine yourself brand new. It's good to see you.
Thank you.
So we met at a special event for the telepathy tapes.
Yes, we did.
And so I'm very curious about, so one of the things that they talk about on the telepathy tapes, which is a podcast I highly recommend people listen to if they haven't already tapped into it, is psi ability. And if you could speak a little bit to that, and also what I love with the telepathy tapes is that psi ability is not pathologized, yet I also see trauma as a doorway to spiritual awakening and potential development of psi ability. So what's your experience with that?
Trauma was my way in to my psychic ability. So I had a near-death experience when I was 16, and that cracked the door open. I was above my lifeless body, and I became just, I could hear everyone's outside thoughts and inside thoughts, even though my body was unconscious. So that was my first taste of access to non-local intelligence, which is another term that describes what it's like to be psychic. Then different events happened over my life. And then I wound up going to the Hoffman Institute, which was channeled by a psychic medium, by the way. The whole process was channeled by a medium. And then after the process, my teacher took me aside and said, by the way, you know how you've had those psychic experiences on and off throughout your life? I said, yes. And then she said, well, when you leave here, the doors to your mind are going to blow wide open. She said, this is an official Hoffman advice. I'm just giving you a heads up. And that's exactly what happened.
I've heard really good things about the Hoffman Institute.
That's a game changer for a lot of people. Yeah.
And when you look back, do you see that there were signs of these capacities and tendencies as a child or
Yes.
in your family as well, like family members having these
Yes.
abilities?
So I grew up in a pretty abusive alcoholic family. My mother had borderline personality disorder, which is, Joan Crawford's a great example of that. She wasn't quite, well, no, she was no picnic. Let's just put it that way. So I spent years kind of trying to heal trauma and pain. After the doors to my mind blew open, I was fortunate enough, I think it was really a manifestation. Had the privilege of meeting the Dalai Lama's emissary, who is a psychic medium. So I actually sat with him in a friend's garden in Kona and described the Tibetan view, the Tibetan Buddhist view of this ability. And he said, the Dalai Lama doesn't make a big move without first consulting with the oracle. And our culture, this is a gift. That in our culture, this is a path to enlightenment. It's not enlightenment. Let's be clear. It's just one path. And he said, and in your culture, it's a scary movie. In your culture, people are scorned. In your culture, it's just a very different paradigm. And so that was really, really helpful. But he also mentioned that this is also viewed as a gift to people who have had to endure trauma. And it did help keep me safe because I was living in a household as the youngest, and there's constant underlying resentment and anger was like the environment. And so I can sense when the mood was about to shift, when when the shoe was about to drop. Right? So that was that's how I sort of training this sixth sense out of necessity.
Right, right. I often think of it as, not just with psychic abilities, with all sorts of tracking capacities that a certain quality of vigilance, it's like, oh, I had a survival strategy and I honed it into a skill, right? And so that's also what I'm hearing. And so, there are different abilities in terms of clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairvision, clairsentience, and everything. And so in terms of how you work, how do you get your information?
So I'm what's referred to as an evidentiary clairvoyant psychic medium. So evidentiary means I come back with pretty specific details. That's how I was able to help U.S. federal agents investigate cold murder cases because I could access the consciousness of the victim and the perpetrator. So I'm a very practical psychic medium. I'm not a spiritual counselor or guide. I'm not a life coach. I'm very practical. I really function as a psychic detective or a psychic spy, depending upon your perspective, and I love it.
For people who are not watching this on YouTube and who are listening, she's glowing and lighting up and has the most beautiful big smile as she says that.
I love my superpower.
Yes, you love your superpower.
I do. I felt like the first time I worked with law enforcement was kind of tested. So they put a double sealed evidence box at my feet and said, well, what can you tell us about the contents of this box? And I said, well, it's a black baseball cap, but you're going to put something else in there. And at the last minute, you change your mind. So they opened the box and then they opened the envelope and it was a black baseball cap. And they said, yeah, we were going to put a more sensitive piece of evidence in there, but we didn't want to compromise it. Will you come to the murder scene? I'm like, yes, let's go. I felt like Wonder Woman without the big boobs and a cape. I was like, couldn't wait to go because I'm not focused on the tragedy. I'm focused on let's get that. Let's get the person who did this. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. And it's just, I have a taste for justice on the whole, but yeah, it's amazing. And I'm not all knowing and all seeing. So let's get that clear. I'd be levitating if I was, but I'm very helpful and very accurate.
And so that's what I was asking was what are do you get a vision of the black baseball cap?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we all operate with leaning into a predominant sense. So I'm visual. So I usually get a picture. If I'm identifying a person, I typically get their hair first. And that's because if you think about it, one of the most identifying characteristics of an individual, if I'm trying to get you to understand who I'm talking about, I'd say, oh, Susan, she has dark blonde hair. It's a bob. It's about this long. You'd know who I'm talking about. So I usually get the hair, which is kind of funny, and then height and personality. And I just kind of just keep going, just keep pulling this. I just keep pulling the piece of yarn and see what unfolds.
How did that first meeting occur with the agents? How did they find you?
Oh, trauma. I was dealing with a pretty vigorous stalker who had 16 restraining orders, a number of felonies. And what's interesting is 4 years prior to his arrival, I shared with a friend, I said, there's going to be a strange man lurking at my door at night. I'm going to go ahead and get a taser gun. And so that's how it started. And I had to work with him pretty closely and a lot. So I said to one of the agents, so you wanted to be a ballerina when you were young? And she said, oh my God, I still want to be a ballerina. I use the bar method to exercise. Don't tell anyone at the station. And I said, well, I'm not going to tell anyone. Well, I just told all of you. Anyway, you don't know who she is. So I said, well, I'm psychic, right? And then she said, I clearly. And then I said, would you ever use people like us for investigations? She said, I haven't, but I've watched every episode of Medium, which is a drama based on a true story, where a psychic medium did work for a long time with the Phoenix district attorney.
Yeah.
So she was all about it, and they were being very helpful to me. They're trying their level best to keep me safe. And I just wanted to, return the favor. Even though it was their job, they were really going above and beyond to help keep me safe. So that's how it started.
That's amazing, because I've had clients who've been stalked before and they haven't gotten that same kind of help. So, I mean, it depends. There's so many different kinds of stalking.
Well, it has to do with my jurisdiction. So I live in a national park and we have federal law enforcement here. So it's not SFPD is involved. So it's a different.
Amazing.
The laws are different here.
So for anyone listening, if you think you're ever going to get stalked, move to a national park.
I mean, anyway, yeah. So that's the difference. And you're right. I mean, stalking charges there's an incredibly high threshold of evidence you have to meet before they can or they will prosecute for stalking. And I was met with those restrictions, and it also really pissed me off. And I thought, well, I'm pretty strong and resourceful, and I'm willing to fight. But there are people who don't have those inner resources, and there are people who are dealing with far worse things than I am. I really do enjoy keeping people out of harm's way. What I do now is I keep people out of harm's way in business, but I also help them spot opportunities that they're not going to see with some of their expert advisors, all their critical thinking, all their lived experience, all their data. That's all valuable, but it cannot see what psychic intelligence can see.
Right. Just going back for a moment, I mean, it's this interesting thing that I think a lot about, that when we're in the center of an incredible challenge, we don't always see the opportunity or gift or, whatever word you want to use to describe it, until some time passes. And so if you hadn't had that stalker, you might not have been introduced to these federal agents in this particular way, and this particular thing that you love and light up around.
Right.
You may not have had access to.
Yeah. It's the law of opposites, right? There's for every challenge or pain, there's an equal benefit available if you're patient enough and open to it. I believe that anyway. And I remember I made a proclamation out loud because people were saying, why don't you move? And I said, I'm not moving. He's moving. And they would say, well, aren't you scared? I'm like, yeah, I'm scared, but I'm choosing courage, which is being scared and doing it anyway.
Mhm.
And that's like the healthiest response available to me right now. So that's what I'm doing. And
Yeah.
I'm glad I did, because if I did move, then I just go somewhere else and be scared about something else.
Yeah, I mean, and then here's the thing that I can also be, and this might be off or it might be on, but the way that I also see it is we get these opportunities to if we had to dissociate from a situation as a child,
Yeah.
then there's reoccurring events that give us the same opportunity to feel the core feelings to process through the original wound. And you were not
Right.
safe in your home,
No,
and you didn't get a choice,
no.
right? And so here, this situation, you're like, no, this is my space. This is my home. You get to take a stand for yourself in a totally different way and claim your safety there. So that's
I've
perfect.
actually never looked at it that way, but that's a great frame. It's true.
Oh yeah, I've had a lot of interesting trials around my home and opportunities to revisit terror.
I
Um,
know.
and that's the thing. I can either stay. I had a home invasion, and my realtor, who I told, was like, "Do you want to sell your house?" I was like, "What?" For a moment, I thought, "Oh, Montana is calling me," and I'm like, "No, I built this. This is my home." And so the opportunity is to revisit the actual original feelings that were activated in my system. And it had nothing to do, way scarier to have, violence inside your household than to have a stranger break into your house
Yes.
when you're home. Do you know what I mean? So,
Oy.
yeah. So you stayed taking your space back.
Well, I met a Brazilian witch who helped me.
Ah,
uh, Cast a, and I'm not kidding. She only would talk to me if I was vouched for. My abilities were
hmm
vouched for. She said,
hmm
because this is a spell and a tradition that's been passed down orally for hundreds of years.
hmm
So someone vouched for me. We spoke. We did a little thing. I had to swear I would never reveal it, and I won't. And he hasn't been back since.
Awesome.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so glad to hear that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're still working with federal agents as you also are working with business?
No, I'm not working with law enforcement anymore. The person who I was working, this sergeant, she's since retired.
Mhm.
I think at some point, if there is a compelling case, I would
Mhm.
volunteer. And if I had space, I would volunteer. But no, I work with established founders and investors now because, you know, these people have a lot of influence. And I only work, and to be clear, I'm not working with just any old established founder or investor. They have to have a good heart, they have to be doing good in the world. Because
Mhm.
my intention is, because they have power and influence, I want to amplify their ability to influence in a good way.
Yeah.
So that's my target market. It's those people. Because really, I mean, a lot of a lot of damage can be done in business, but also a lot of opportunity and and revenue and creativity can occur if their path is a little safer, or they can
Mhm.
spot opportunities that they may have missed. So
Mhm.
that's where I've chosen to take it, which is unusual. I was at an event of founders and venture capitalists, and this woman said, "You're quite a corporate medium." And I said, "Thank you. That's what I'm going for. I want to be like Clark Kent. I don't want you to know. I just want you to, you know what I mean? I'll let you know if I think you need to know."
Yeah. Well, what's interesting though is also you get to have a really big reach,
Mhm.
when if you're working with people that are established in a particular way, and as you said, they're like I would also add embodied leaders, but heart-centered leaders
Yes.
that are impacting on a larger scale, impacting change. And so you get to vicariously have a bigger reach in that
Right.
way. Yeah.
Right. That's my strategy. That's my
Mhm.
intention.
Mhm.
I mean, so for years, I was in the closet. I was in the closet for 14 years, and I
Mhm.
was friends with the medium, and he would tell me about his readings, and I thought, I mean, I think it's fine to talk to grandma, but that's just not what I'm meant to do. And couldn't figure out what I was meant to do. And I thought,
Mm.
because again, I'm not all knowing and all seeing. And then I did a session with a gentleman who owns institutional investing firms. He's quite successful. Also, he was skeptical. Then
Mhm.
I brought in his grandmother. I brought in his mother. He was crying within the first 5 minutes. He was
Mhm.
blown away. And then months later, I asked if he would join me for coffee. And I said, well, what if I helped you with your business? I mean, because he told me how profound that meeting was, and it changed his perspective. He didn't hope that there was life after death. He had evidence. He said he was less stressed. He was not as angry. So
Mhm.
I asked him, well, what do you think if I use my superpower to help you in business? And he said, I'll put you on retainer right now. And
Mhm.
that was how Insightful was born. And he's a good
Mhm.
guy. He's a
Mhm.
very good guy. He's a devoted husband, father, philanthropist, just volunteers, just
Mhm.
he's a kind, successful man with a heart.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. So really invested in using your power for good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like Wonder Woman without
Yeah.
the big boobs and the cape.
And the glass plane.
Oh, I love her.
I love her plane.
I love her magic. I love her magic, her golden magic lasso of truth so
Mhm.
much
Mhm.
that my friend bought me a Wonder Woman branded gold phone charger.
Cord. Mhm. Mhm.
It could pretend I had her lasso of truth.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing, the idea of a lasso of truth of like not just getting other people to spill the beans, but also when you have the ability and you're seeing things all the time, potentially, how to navigate what you share with people, and what you don't.
Tricky.
And in a way, I mean, it's an interesting thing, like, you have an explicit career that labels you psychic, and I sit with clients where clients will sometimes look at me and go, "Did you just read my mind?" And they just like, "What? I was just thinking you just said," or whatever it is, and it's condoned and it's useful in that container, but outside of those walls,
Yes.
people don't always wanna be seen.
That is right. And people who are hiding things, especially they're up to no good, are very uncomfortable in my presence,
Mhm.
which is fine by me.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, how so this is one of the things that's so interesting, right? How does that show up for you around dating?
Ah, well, this is an excellent question. So I have friends who are psychics.
Uh-huh.
We trade with one another
Mhm.
because intuition is all emotions, no logic.
Mhm.
So when your own emotion is involved, you don't see as clearly.
Mhm.
So I have a friend who used to be a psychic spy for the CIA, and
Mm.
she and I trade. And then I have another friend who uses her ability to pick stocks and just for herself. She's not
Yeah.
interested in being kidnapped. And we just trade really. It's so,
Mhm.
yeah. As I mentioned before, I'm not all knowing and all seeing. I'd probably be levitating if I was. Relationships are It's interesting because I can get blurry, but I can also still see
Mhm. Mhm. Sure.
loud and clear. It just depends. Yes. But
Mhm.
I think I believe that, your life is a story you're telling yourself about yourself. So I'm choose to tell myself the story that even if I'm romantically involved with someone that I can still see clearly. And if
Mhm.
a man is uncomfortable with my ability, because some are really drawn,
Yeah.
and think it's fascinating and wonderful, and others immediately are uncomfortable, and that's because they have something to hide, which is
Yeah.
great because we don't have to waste any time.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Absolutely. Good. I'm curious to go back to the NDE, the near death
Mhm.
experience.
Yeah.
And I was listening to something where you were talking about the experience of bliss, and I have a friend who also that sense of bliss after her stroke lasted for years.
Wow.
Like total removal of like pure neutrality and all the stuff with her. parents, like all those emotions from abuse and neglect and whatever, everything was neutralized,
Yeah.
and so she was in that state of bliss, and eventually emotions came back. But I'm
Wow.
curious for you, did it only exist before you came back into your body, or did it remain?
Unfortunately, it was just during the NDE that I
Okay.
felt the state of bliss and peace and kind of, no, then I had to go home
Mm,
and go home to my very hurt body. And then I never
mhm,
told anyone. I didn't tell my parents and tell anyone about
mhm,
this experience because I just knew they would think I was nuts or that I was making it up. There was no one to
mhm,
share it with. So that was challenging because
mm.
I had a peek at another reality that I knew was very real.
And did that ability stay with you, or did it not open until you went to the Hoffman Institute
It
years
sort of
later?
opened in fits and starts. So, like, I would, one day I was driving down the highway and I saw in my mind's eye a car flipped over with people milling around it at like a 45-degree angle. It's very specific, right?
Mhm,
And then about 3 miles later, there it was. It was
mhm.
exactly what I saw. So I would so that's called precognition. So I'd have precognitive events.
Uh-huh.
And then I was asked to potentially collaborate on a project with an architect friend of mine. It's another chapter of my life. And he said, I have to tell you though, this project has some history to it. And I said, oh, okay, what's that? And he said, well, there's a building in
Mhm,
downtown Napa called the Fajani building.
mm,
And there was a vicious murder that occurred. And there were two sisters, and one sister was slain.
mm,
And that's the building we're going to. It's been shut up like a time capsule for about 20-25 years.
mhm, mhm.
And I said, okay, well, let's go. And so I actually met the murderer in a lucid dream in my sleep, and I literally sat up in bed.
Yeah.
And I saw he's got a dirty white t-shirt. He's got kind of longish, dirty blonde hair. And then I saw this tail fin of an old-fashioned car that was white but weathered. And then I saw these really shiny, small, round green leaves surrounding this tail fin. And I thought, okay, well, that was interesting. I knew it was the murderer.
Yeah.
I knew it. And it's just and that's how this works. You just have an immediate knowing
Yeah.
that's that you can't deny. And so I met my friend and I met the developer. This is a 3-story building. We're getting a tour. We come to this place where it's just by where there's an ice chest and a kitchen area. And I have felt this surge in my chest and I pushed my friend aside to get out of this spot, the energy of this spot. And I asked the developer, hey, is this the spot where the body was found? Now, mind you, it's 3 stories. He said, yeah, you're actually right by the spot.
Mhm,
And she was murdered viciously, possibly with an ice pick from his chest.
mhm.
So here's what's crazy. Within about 30 days, the murderer was identified with DNA evidence in a Colorado prison. He was serving time for a violent rape. So he was still alive.
Mhm.
And what was revealed was he stole her white Cadillac and it had never been found.
Mm,
So that tail fin I was seeing. So
mhm.
that was like, okay, I'm like, okay, something's something. And it just got stronger. And I hit it because I didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
I wasn't really interested in people's judgments and skepticism. And then, it was just really just last year where I said, it's not my responsibility to manage other people's perceptions of me or
Mhm,
anything else.
mhm.
And I don't care anymore. This is really powerful and it's very real. The CIA, the FBI, foreign and domestic militaries all use us.
Yeah.
And whether you believe it or not, it's happening. So I just thought, I don't need to convince anyone. I don't need to. I mean, it's kind of funny. I used to be skeptical. So the joke's on me.
Mhm.
I have compassion and understanding for people who are skeptical, but I've just found, like, as soon as I came out of the closet, so to speak, I've been really surprised at how welcoming and embracing and curious people have been. And I think that's reflected in the phenomena of the telepathy tapes. Like,
Yeah.
so huge right now.
So you had started to tell me something before we were recording. Can we revisit that?
Yeah, sure, sure. So the telepathy tape starts with episodes about telepathy and a population of non-speaking autistic children who have telepathic ability with their parents or siblings, people close to them. And I actually know one of the researchers for the telepathy tapes. This is all very real.
Mm.
They're stunningly accurate, and the CIA just infiltrated them.
And when you say infiltrated,
Yeah, so they posed I don't have all the details, but essentially they posed as like wanting to be a caretaker or volunteer for these non-speaking autistic children who possess this telepathic ability because it's so powerful. So that the infiltrator just, didn't show up in a black suit and, black hat. Like wasn't
Mhm.
like that. It wasn't obvious. It was very subtle way to gain trust. I mean, my thought is probably one of these telepathics tipped off the producer. I mean, I'll just tell you
Yeah.
the federal agent that I worked with, she bought me this coffee cup. She said, "Oh, I had to get this. You brought it from Washington, D.C. And it says, 'My third eye can see right through your bullshit.'" That's probably what happened. I mean, you can't be a CIA operative, a secret one, for very long around people with this ability.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess the fear that I would have is that they were like when you say infiltrating, that they were
Yeah.
infiltrating and then wanting to cause them harm in some way or stop them or use them or, like it, I can't remember what episode it was. It's first season early on. And it's an interesting thing. It's like in order to protect your kids, not wanting the information out there, because what are they going to want to do? Just like with aliens or something, like take these beings and then try to study them and try to like not support them in learning how to communicate and
No,
have resources, but it really for their own use.
to weaponize them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the Stanford Research Institute for many years did psychic research under Dr. Russell Targ and Dr. Hal Puthoff. They did research. They also served 5 presidential administrations
Mm.
because we are using this technology in military. So we started with the
Mhm.
Russians had a huge army. Chinese have a huge army. And then what happened was the Stanford Research Institute psychic research program was dismantled, but you're not going to kill the golden goose. So those individual remote viewers or psychic spies went to work for the CIA or other agencies. So I mean, it's like anything. It can be used for good, it could be used for evil. But honestly, I think more people are waking up and tuning into these abilities. And I think that's a really good thing. And I just met a young woman who's going through a real trial because she just had this ability crash into her life.
Mhm. Mhm.
Nothing she was prepared for. She can't talk to her family about it. So I offered to you know, just help her find the dimmer switch and
Mhm.
help her understand she's not alone. There are many of us. But there's a reason why there's been secret societies and wisdom schools for a long time because,
Mhm.
yeah, that's why I like the analogy of Clark Kent because you can't tell.
Mhm.
So, yeah, you have to be discerning about who you share with and what you share.
Do you work with people and their pets? Or mostly your focus, like, like it
Yeah.
sounds like you're mentoring this young woman, and so that's,
I'm just mentioning her out of, compassion because I know what it was like, but that's not a part of my business. No,
yeah,
my business is
yeah.
really, it's like any business, you really need to know your target market and who you
Mhm.
serve and who you
Mhm.
don't. And so I'm really
Mhm.
clear about who I serve. It's very specific.
Yeah, there's something very powerful about niche, like dialing it in and having that connection to your dharma or your
100%.
purpose. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was actually kind of, not, I kind of, I was, I've been told, like, and ultimately I will serve 12 very influential, high net worth individuals who have a good heart and are doing good in the world. And then after that, I'm not taking any more clients.
Yeah. Mhm.
That's it. I'm just going to work with this council. It's actually the Sacred Circle of 12 is the name I was given.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I'm pretty clear about what I'm supposed to be doing. And then the
Mhm.
other time I should have some fun because I don't always have enough fun.
I understand. I'm I'm curious about any regular spiritual practices that you engage in for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So this is what's, and I just had a conversation with a psychic medium from New York. I was introduced to him by his friend who's a paranormal research
Mhm.
scientist. And he's had all of this training
Mhm.
and gone to all of these schools. And I have done nothing.
Mhm.
Nothing. And
Mhm.
then I heard from a friend who's a medium that he met this incredibly talented psychic medium from England, an older woman. And he said, "Oh, who did you study with? And what do you do?" And she said, "Oh, love, I've never studied anything that would ruin
Yeah.
me."
Yeah. That's what
So,
I've had writing teachers, like, a friend who works in an MFA program in grad school, and I wanted to go to grad school for writing, and she was like, "Don't do it. It'll ruin your creative."
well,
Yeah.
I thought I should study remote viewing because I had the honor of speaking to Dr. Russell Targ from the Stanford Research Institute. So I
Mhm.
got interested in what is this protocol called remote viewing. So I signed up for an online class, a live. I freaking hated it. I mean, I didn't dislike it. I was like, oh, way to take all the magic and all the joy and just destroy it.
Wow. What about, I mean, because you mentioned the Dalai Lama's person. I mean, in
Yeah.
Tibetan Buddhism, lucid dreaming is a tool
Yeah.
that's used. And so what about, I mean, it's a different version of remote viewing.
Yeah. It's just different. Well, so I used to have lucid dreams and then it's just like, I want to go to sleep.
Totally.
Tell me, I do not need this during my sleeping time. No, thank you. You can come later. Make an appointment.
So, in terms of people, it's a two-part question. In terms of people who either, I know that you went to the Hoffman Institute, you haven't done a lot of other kind of like formal study, but for people who want support, like you're mentoring this one woman, what are there other resources that you would recommend? And then also for developing intuition, which basically is listening to your different abilities.
Right.
Is there a specific exercise that you might guide our listeners through?
Well, I will say I have a multi-part answer. So everyone's different. I'm not a big joiner. I don't want to be part of an ism.
Mhm,
But some people do, and that's great.
mhm,
And they should go ahead and do that. Interestingly enough, I had this gathering at my home based on the book, The Power of Eight, which really is
mhm,
about the power of healing and the power of prayer, or whatever you would like to call it. And this one friend, she's originally from Taiwan, and she remarked on the self-help movement. She said, "You know what we have to say about the self-help that Americans are always doing?" And I said, "No, do tell. I want to know." And she said, self-help is good, but what you really need is community.
mhm,
And so that's what made the difference for me was just having community. And actually, I don't know if I should say this or not, I've been meeting with Tim Chang of the Portal and a
mhm,
paranormal research scientist, and we're talking about creating a modern mystery school there
mhm, mhm,
because it really does work best in a community. So I also met very briefly, I met a very famous psychic medium and James Von Prague at a party 2 weeks after my awakening, which is kind of interesting timing. And I was sitting on a couch next to him
Mm-hmm.
and I said, "Oh, James, I think I might be psychic." And he started laughing at me. He said, "Oh, honey, you're a psychic medium. You're so good. You can solve murders." I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and so I want to do this. I want to talk to dead people. So a lot of this is just, I think, finding community, and we're all different. We all have different values and interests and priorities, but I'd say that's number one,
Yeah.
really. So I would say that's the first thing to do. I haven't studied. I never studied. And as I mentioned, I don't really have interest in studying. I'd rather just keep doing it
Yeah.
and strengthening my muscle. That's the best way to do it. So I think the thing to do, if I could give one piece of advice about intuitive ability, is trust yourself, trust it. It does feel in the beginning as if you're making it up. You'll say to yourself, "Am I making this up?" Well, it comes from the same area of consciousness where we do make things up. So it has a similar taste.
Mm.
But if you notice, parts of your body will light up when you're receiving an intuitive hit. It could be the hairs on your arms stand up, or you get a feeling in your gut. Whatever it is, I know a client of mine, his face tingle. I said, "Okay, that's I call it a psychic receipt. That's your psychic receipt. That
Mm.
means that you're not making it up. It's actually a download." So it is so simple. And I have to say, there's a lot of, and it's just, this is my opinion. There are a lot of psychic schools that I believe, in my experience of them, and I haven't experienced all of them, are
Mm.
complicating to profit. It is just that simple. You
Mm-hmm.
don't need a whole thing, school, like a certificate. We're all intuitive. We just have to put aside for a moment our cultural paradigms, our religious paradigms, or atheistic paradigms, and our paradigms around science, scientific materialism. If you can
Mm-hmm.
just allow them to be and trust what you're getting, that's it. That's how you're intuitive. And there is no more complicated than that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so for people who are listening, who want to develop their intuition
Hmm.
and want to practice listening inward,
Hmm.
is there any kind of practice that you would guide people through?
I don't have a protocol. Some
Mhm.
people do.
Mhm.
It just comes to me naturally. I have created a dimmer switch. My antenna is not up 24/7. I wouldn't be able to sleep. It would be very distracting. So I open up the channel intentionally when it's time to open it up. But because it's a dimmer switch, it'll flip on if I need it. But yeah, I mean, simple meditation is a great way. I
Mhm.
am not
Mhm.
good at meditation because I have ants in my pants. And I actually
Mhm.
had an Ayurvedic physician said I shouldn't meditate,
Mm.
which I was like, "Really? Are you allowed to say that? I think you're going to lose your job." And he said, "Nope." He said, "Nope, you have too much pitta. You should run and sweat." I was like, "Oh, thank God."
That's awesome.
So
Yeah.
that is how I do it.
So anything else that you would like to share with our audience before we shift?
Yeah, just thanks for listening and being open to listening. And it's okay if you're skeptical, but you can look and take a look at what the Stanford Research Institute did for 5 presidential administrations. You can see
Mhm.
how this can translate very well into business and to investing. It's powerful. So you cannot believe it, but you're kind of missing out if you are not at least a little bit curious.
And how can listeners find you?
Yeah, you can find me at insightful.foundation. It's a weird URL, insightful.foundation. And there's a Let's Connect button. I do work by referral. So please be sure to say you heard me on this podcast. And then we can take a look at the website. If it's something you're interested in exploring, you're not just curious, you're actually interested in exploring the
Mhm.
benefits of this, we can have a no obligation chat about it. And
Mhm.
Really, it's just that simple. I mean, probably to your dismay, I have no social media presence deliberately because I want to, you know, guard my the confidentiality that I offer my clients and the discretion. So I don't have a social media presence. I have a very reluctant LinkedIn profile, but that's it.
Mhm,
That's it.
mhm.
Remember, I'm Clark Kent. Okay, I'm Clark Kent.
Yeah, yeah, and so thank you. Thank you so much
Oh,
for your
thank
time.
you. Thank you
Yeah.
for being open and curious
Mhm,
and and for doing what you do. I mean, around this whole topic of trauma, it is, really our most painful moments and experiences are the key to our or they can be the key to our purpose.
mhm. Truly. Yeah. Well, and my little prayer for you is that maybe one of your 12 is listening, and
Oh, thank you
maybe they
so
find
much.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I love
because
that intention.
it's an important thing. I like the intimacy of working one-on-one with people, but part of doing this podcast is having a bigger reach, is offering resources to people around the world. Thanks for listening. I'm Charna Cassell with LaidOPEN Podcast. And if you're interested in finding out more about the work I do in the world, you can go to passionatelife.org. If you're interested in joining my newsletter, or staying connected. So charnacassell.com or on Instagram, Laid Open Podcast. Please share and like and review this episode if you found benefit so that a larger audience can find us. And I totally appreciate it and love that you're part of my community. If you're ever interested in reaching out and sharing your experience, I appreciate that. And be well.